Thank you for joining us today. In the studio, I have my friend Chris Lambert, who has done a number of independent films and used to work for the News Herald. So let's get started. Chris, so how do you get motivated for your projects, your writing projects? How do you get into the creative mode?
Well, a long time ago, I noticed that when I was a little boy, I'd have like cowboy men, little plastic soldiers, and I noticed then that I started playing with them together, but I started writing scenes in my head so that when I would have a little battle around the coffee table, it would actually be an entire script in my head. So I wound up actually like script writing when I was like 5 and 6 without realizing that's what it was. I just wasn't writing it down on paper. And then later, when I was a young teenager, I kind of explored why I'm always thinking and why I'm always like to do creative things, and was writing even back then. And I found a book by a Dr. Rollo May called The Courage to Create, and it's all about, right on the first paragraph of the book is, out of the blue, it just hit me. It came to me in a flash, and it sort of explains where the creative process starts. And I became enamored with that because since I was a little boy, I was always writing things in my head, then starting to write little short stories, and I was always fascinated with anything. Maybe I didn't know the terminology then, but the creative process.
So why did you become a creative writer in the field for the newspaper and writing scripts? And your other jobs?
Yeah, because I was always thinking of something spinning in the mind, always like, well, if that's the way it is always, what if it were just a little bit different? Or could I come up with something to make it better or more interesting if I didn't like it? Because to me, anyone who goes to the movies and says, that was a good movie, but I think it should have ended like, this. Well, in effect, they want to rewrite the ending. So they're writing. So they should just not do that. They should just go and write their own story. And to me, that's, it just, from a lifetime of looking at that one little extra thing or one little different thing made me realize, well, gosh, I'm doing all this writing in my head. I might as well start, doing stuff on paper and getting paid for it. So I became a writer for the Scene magazine at age 15. So that was kind of young. I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't take advantage of it, but it was quite, I look back and say, wow, that was something extraordinary.
Have you ever had writer's block?
We had talked about this earlier, and I sat in about 1992, 18 years ago or so, as we sit here. I thought I had writer's block for about 7 or 8 minutes, and I was a little perturbed with myself. And I said, well, I think I'll just wash my hair and have a cup of coffee and think about it. Halfway through me washing my hair, I said, oh my gosh, it came to me. So I had to get the suds off and finish the coffee and run back. And so I think I had writer's block for about 7 minutes, but I really don't ever have any trouble with creating. So to me, it was sort of humorous that before I could even start worrying about having writer's block, it was over. Maybe 6 minutes.
You do independent films.
I've made 3 about Orson Welles, only because I literally, I had some knee operations and I was flat on my back for a few months and my beard was growing, and you don't get out, when your leg's broken, you don't get out of bed just to trim your beard and look nice for no one. So I after about 3 months, I took my first, shower where I was allowed to get wet instead of just the splash bath, and I got out of the shower and my hair was slicked back, and my beard was real long, and I put the toothbrush in my mouth for a second, and I didn't have my glasses on, so I squinted into the mirror and I said, oh my God, I look like Orson Welles. And as if I just need to put on some weight and dye my beard white. So and I'd always been teaching Orson Welles in class for years, but I never realized that there was a similarity in appearance. So, and I had met Orson Welles' cameraman and was friends with him before he had passed away. So I thought, why aren't I using these connections or these friendships that I've had and this knowledge I have of teaching Orson, why don't I do something with it? So I wound up making 3 90-minute films, and then just recently I've been asked to appear in a one-man stage play, which I'm doing next month. and again later in the fall at Lakeland here. So yeah, it's just weird that something that comic books and films and Orson Welles, three things that I love, that I've always been able to sort of gear my so-called career around.
Do you like science fiction?
Oh boy, I don't know. I'm sort of regressing here because I do like the first two Alien films. You know, the horror, haunted house in space, and in the second one, Vietnam in space. I like Outland, we talked about, sort of like High Noon in space. There's some other thinking man's films. They made for television movie Colossus: The Forbin Project with Eric Braeden. That's a nice. I wish they would have finished the trilogy. It was a trilogy of books, but they only filmed the first part for television. I like that. It was early 70s.
And I guess the last question would be, what are your future plans?
May 22nd at the Willowick Senior Citizen Center. It's called The Last Night of Orson Welles, and it's basically a one-man play. It's about 90 minutes, and it is based on a real incident. He was about to appear on Merv Griffin that night to tape an episode. They decided to talk about the old days and the old Hollywood days and Orson's life, which they never really went back and were nostalgic. And and unfortunately, after he taped it, he died a few hours afterwards. So I just figured Orson would be going through some questions that Merv had sent him. And so I took that little, well, what if? And then a bunch of people happened to come in the living room, the audience, and I said, oh, hello, I didn't know you were there. And it's just basically that.
Well, thanks again for showing up. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.